Here we are, session 4, our final session of Exhale. And in this class today, we will be warming up the body a bit more than usual with the focus on the core and the obliques. Reason being is that we will be exploring a yogic model called Prana, Agni, Mala. And it is a 3-part, 3-aspect model that kind of takes us through what it means for yoga to be a waste removal system. So in this class today, I invite you to have your props as usual, your blankets, your bolster, your blocks, and we'll see what we end up using. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to start by lying on my back. And of course, you don't have to, but if you want to join me, you can. You might start with the feet on the floor, especially if your lower back feels a little bit tight or tense. Another option is to draw the knees in toward the chest, maybe wrap the arms around and rock from side to side just for a moment. This helps our lumbar spine come a little bit closer to the earth rather than it being kind of tucked up underneath us, so to speak. So at any point you want to release your feet or even extend your legs out long, that is an option. Starting to get settled and find your space. We'll take just a few breaths here. Just inviting yourself into this practice. You might just become aware of the floor beneath you or any props beneath you. Noticing where your skin meets the surface of whatever is holding you up. I'm just feeling that support. You might even start to notice your breath. And as always, you don't have to change how you're breathing. You don't have to force yourself to breathe deeper. But it is helpful to just start by noticing, oh, I'm breathing. My breath is moving in and out. And you can breathe at your own pace. With your next inhale, you might choose to stay with where you are, or option to pull one knee in toward the chest. It doesn't matter which one. And you might even wrap your hands around your knee. And you might even take a few movements of allowing your knee to move left to right, perhaps guiding it with your hand, so that the hip and your leg and your knee are not really doing the movement. It's more receiving the movement, and your hand and arm can kind of do the work here. This dynamic movement in and out of your hip might continue to be welcome, or at any point you'd like to come back to center. And then perhaps just giving your knee a little tug. It might even open out to the side a little bit, perhaps coming more toward the same side armpit. Obviously not reaching your armpit, but just tugging super mindfully in that direction. It doesn't have to be a big action, and we can just hang out here. So whether you choose movement or stillness, we'll be here for just a few breaths, and I'll start to explain to you what the model is that we'll be exploring in class today. So Prana, Agni, Mala. Prana is your life force. It is your life force that is carried on your breath, through your breath. It occurs with your breath. So every time you breathe in, it increases your prana. Every time you breathe out, a new cycle begins. Agni is fire, and it's specifically found in your digestive systems and in your core, which is why we are focusing on core today. And Mala is waste. It is the toxins and the leftover residue from our experiences, both physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. When you're ready, you might switch your legs, releasing the leg that you have in toward your chest down and pulling in your opposite knee if you're ready. And you might start with your movement in and out. Or at any point you might find stillness. We'll be here for a few more breaths. So this yogic model tells us that when we breathe in, we welcome in our prana. And just if you've ever created like a fire, like maybe camping or something like that, you know that to stoke the flame, you have to blow on it. It needs oxygen. So when we breathe in, that oxygen, our life force, stokes the flame in our abdomen. And that causes the mala, the waste, to be burned up and purified, allowing us to metabolize that waste and the residue. So that's something that we're focusing on today, is using our breath to release and metabolize any residue, any waste or toxin that might be sticking around, and we are just ready to burn up some of that excess mala. Whenever you're ready to release your leg, option to do so, perhaps stretching back out, maybe even taking a full body stretch if you'd like to take your arms up overhead. So in class today, I invite you to create an intention that suits your needs for this moment, for this class. It could be, I release blank. Fill in the blank. What are you releasing? Knowing that every time you breathe in, you are stoking the flame in your abdomen, your Agni, and it is pushing that fire in your stomach down toward the mala, the waste, and it is burning it up, it is metabolizing it. So maybe it's something that you are releasing today, or burning up. Or perhaps it is something that you are welcoming, maybe welcoming it with your inhales, increasing your prana, your life force. So you might fill in the blank with one of these intentions or affirmations here. I release. I welcome. You might even use both of them. So taking a moment, just 3 more breaths here. When you have your intention, using your 3rd and final breath in this shape to breathe into it, breathe life, prana, into your intention. And when you're ready, you could roll over to one side if you are on your back, and then start to press your hands into the floor to find your way away. And wherever you are, at any point that you are ready, I'll meet you in child's pose. But this time, as you take your knees a little bit wider and maybe touch the toes back behind you, you could bring your forearms to the floor and prep for a shape that we'll be exploring in a little bit. And if this isn't welcome, if you prefer to just come into your child's pose in your normal preferred way, you can do that too. But if you'd like to join me here with your elbows on the floor, you might breathe in and allow your heart space to draw forward. And then as you exhale, you might hollow out the heart by sending the spine back towards the sky or whatever's behind you. And then maybe using your inhale to rock forward again. Heart space shines directly forward. And then with your exhale, when you're ready, maybe you hollow out the heart and curve the spine back. Option to take 2 more rounds at your own pace. Last one. You could continue here if this is especially supportive to you in this moment, or if you'd like to rock yourself forward, I'll meet you in a tabletop where we can find some organic movement. Just taking some time to feel into your body, allowing your spine, your shoulders, your legs, your neck to move in any way that feels right to you for the next 3 rounds of breath. There's no agenda. You can do whatever you want with your body in this moment and in this entire class. Everything I offer you is optional. It is an invitation that you have every right to accept or decline. I'll take one more breath here. All right. When you feel complete, you might meet me back at center. An option here to find a child's pose or a downward facing dog. If you'd like to join me for down dog, you might walk your hands forward a little bit. Tuck your toes and breathe in as you begin to hover the knees up off the mat. And before we straighten out the legs, you might keep the knees bent and just reach back through your arms like you are opening up your armpits. And then option here to pedal out the feet for a few breaths. So you might, kind of like you're riding a bike. One pedal goes up, the other one stays down, and then they switch. Starting to ease into our hamstrings. One last breath. And then if you are in child's pose and you are ready to move out of it, you might shift up into a tabletop. And then I'll meet you in a plank pose. So if you are in down dog, you might rock yourself forward so that your shoulders end up somewhere over your hands. If you're in tabletop, you might need to step your feet back. And your choice here, you can be in a tall, high plank, or at any point you can release your knees down to the mat for a supported plank. All right, we'll take one breath here. And when you decide to, or with your exhale, you might start to lower your body down towards the earth. If your toes are tucked, option to untuck them. With our hands still connected to the earth, we'll find a cobra pose. So breathing in, when you're ready, you might press your hands into the floor and open up your heart space. Perhaps your gaze comes forward. And then with your exhale, or when you decide to, you could lower yourself back down. Option to take 2 more at your own pace. Maybe inhaling to roll up and exhaling to roll down. Last one. All right. And after your last one, option to slide your hands forward, coming into a Sphinx. So, 2 choices here. If you're not sure what Sphinx is, we're going to walk through it right now. But if you notice it, come into it, and you're like, I don't want to do this today, that's okay. You don't have to. You can return to Cobra anytime we do Sphinx if Cobra is preferable. Cobra is the one that we just did. So if you'd like to explore Sphinx here today, with our legs nice and long back behind us, and our elbows connected to the mat, our palms face down on the floor, you might even spread your fingers out nice and wide, allowing your hands to take up space. And then here, one note for your lower back. If you're already feeling like, ooh, my lower back feels funky, then I encourage you to explore this cue, which is engage your quad muscles by pressing the tops of the feet into the floor, and notice how your knees lift up off of the mat. And then point your tailbone down toward your heels and notice how that feels in your lower back. This is something you can take or leave, but it's available to you if you want it. All right, with that engagement, when you're ready, inhale and press your arms into the floor, maybe even taking your gaze up. This is a really opening stretch. All right, and then when you're ready to release, you can soften into the legs. Begin to hollow out the heart, just like we did before. Like you're curling your shoulders in, you're curling your heart back. Now, option here to engage your core and come up onto your knees. This is our low option. Or you can tuck your toes and hover your knees completely for a forearm plank. This is the high option, so whichever one you prefer. And then when you're ready to release, you can soften down. Slide your hands back so that you can stabilize yourself. And when you're ready to press yourself away from the floor, I'll meet you there. Option for child's pose, or tuck your toes for down dog. And there is no wrong choice. This is your practice, and I celebrate whatever choice you make for your body today. We'll take one breath here. And with your next inhale, or when you choose to move on from this shape, because you can stay here longer if this is serving you. But when you're ready, or with your inhale, you might take your gaze forward. If you're in down dog, you can bend your knees and walk your feet forward. If you're in child's pose, you might shift up into tabletop and walk your feet forward. Wherever you are, I'll meet you in a forward fold at the top of your mat. Noticing here that you can bend your knees. Your knees don't have to be locked out. You can add a micro bend or a very deep bend. When you're ready for a halfway lift, you might take an inhale and bring your hands to your shins, lengthening through the spine. And then an exhale to either stay here or let the hands go and come back into a fold. One breath right here. Okay. When you're ready to Breathe in and lift all the way up. You can find some rooting in your feet and engaging your leg muscles. Start to stand all the way up. Maybe taking a moment to readjust to this standing shape. It might feel a little bit lightheaded or wobbly for a second. That's okay. You can just keep your eyes open if you feel like you need to orient yourself. I welcome you to bring to the front of your mind your intention. I release blank. I welcome blank. In your own timing, you might release the hands down to the sides if they aren't already, and we will shift into a chair pose with a little bit of extra engagement to go with our theme. So when you're ready, you might have your feet hip distance apart. You could also have your feet together. It's totally up to you. I like to have my feet hip distance apart just for stability. And you could allow your toes to spread out nice and wide. And with your next inhale, you might sink the hips low and reach the arms up. Noticing here that how far you come into your chair pose is totally up to you. So you could sink really deep, or you could be a bit more shallow. It really just depends. Another option is to bring your hands to heart center if you don't want to reach your arms up. All right. One more inhale, feeling this engagement. Can you feel your heels rooted down into the mat? And then exhale to stand up out of it. Option to roll into your shoulders or move into your neck if that feels supportive to you. And we will revisit our chair pose and start adding on. So inhale, sinking down, your choice of hand placement. All right. Option to stay here at center or shift into your left foot and take your right foot and tap it out to the side. Another option is to just bring your right toes to the earth if you want somewhere in between, or you can tap it out to the right for 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll return back to center. Option to come back up into Tadasana, but second option is to float your right leg up or leave your right toes connected to the earth if balance feels a little bit funky today. So right toes to the earth or float the right foot. Let's take one breath in here. As you exhale, option to step your right foot back as we set up for a Warrior One. Warrior One is different than High Crescent Lunge in that our whole back foot is connected to the mat. However, if Warrior One does not feel welcome and your body is asking for a High Crescent, you could come up onto the ball of your back foot if this is just preferable. So you choose. Warrior One with our back foot plugged into the mat, and your toes can come in at an angle or come up onto the ball of your right foot. All right. Option to inhale and reach your arms up. And exhale, you might start to lengthen through your front leg. Maybe you lunge in and out, perhaps adding the arms in as we take one more. When you're ready, you can float your hands back down to the earth and step your left foot back. We'll float on over to a side plank. So 2 options. 1, on the left side, maybe you're in a high side plank, or you can drop your left knee to the earth and find a side plank here. Maybe reaching your right arm up. So you choose what's going to be the most supportive for your body, but wherever you are, we're not going to be here very long. Looks like 3 more breaths. Can you bring some engagement into the muscles surrounding your left ribs? Maybe even using your hand to kind of tap your ribs and feel the engagement here. Last breath. If you are ready to release, you could bring your right hand back down to the floor. Your choice of a vinyasa here. So high plank or drop the knees for a low plank. When you're ready, maybe your exhale brings you down to the earth, and you could find either a cobra by pressing your hands into the earth and rolling your heart up, or if you'd like to join me, you could slide your hands forward and bring the elbows to the mat, finding Sphinx pose. You could stay here and skip the forearm, or exhale, you might start to hollow out the heart, draw the chin in, and maybe hover your hips up off the floor, or tuck the toes and lift the knees, coming into a forearm plank. Last breath here, breathing in. Exhale, lowering back down to the mat. Sliding the hands back and pressing the hands into the floor when you are ready to come away. Your choice of child's pose or tuck the toes for a down dog. Option to take 3 full breaths here. Can you notice any changes in your body? Perhaps you are feeling a little bit warmer. Maybe your core is feeling a little bit more fired up. You might choose to stay wherever you are for longer. And at any point you are ready to meet me at the top of your mat, we can come into a forward fold. Prepare to do it on the other side. Inhale and halfway lift if and when you're ready. And then exhale to fold right back down. Inhale to rise. Option to exhale and bring your hands down to heart center or release them down to your sides. Breathing here and just noticing. I release. I welcome. With your next inhale, if you are ready to find a chair pose, you might sink the hips down and reach the arms up or hands to heart center. And this time you could choose to stay here or shift your weight into the right foot. Maybe bring your left toes to the earth, or maybe you tap your left toes out for 3, 2, 1. All right. Option to lengthen through your right leg. Maybe your left toes stay in contact with the earth, or maybe your left foot hovers up. 1 breath. As you exhale, you might find a warrior 1 or a high crescent lunge on this side. Your choice here of finding stillness, or you might find some dynamic movement by lunging into your front knee and then lengthening through your front knee. About 3 more breaths. The next time you are lunging into your knee, you might start to settle the hands down towards the earth, stepping your right foot back. Option to find a side plank on the right side. So you might take a high side plank by hovering both knees, or release your right knee to the floor and support yourself this way if that's what your body is asking for. 3 breaths here. With each inhale, adding life force into your body, stoking the flame, burning up the mala, burning up the waste, releasing. Last breath. And when you're ready, you might come back to center. Your choice here, high or low plank. And then we'll lower down to the earth. Your choice of cobra, or slide your hands forward to bring the elbows to the mat for a Sphinx pose. If you're in Sphinx and you'd like to hollow out the heart, with your exhale, you might begin to hollow. Maybe you float the hips up off of the earth. Maybe you tuck your toes and hover the knees. Forearm plank, or wherever you are. Exhale to release when you're ready. Slide the hands back if they aren't already, and press yourself away from the earth. Your choice, child's pose or downward facing dog. 3 breaths. Breathing in prana, life force. Stoking the flame, Agni, and burning up the waste, mala. With your next inhale, if you decide you are ready to move away from this shape that you are in, you might start to find yourself coming forward, stepping the feet forward, and I'll meet you in a forward fold. Taking your halfway lift when you're ready for it. And an exhale to soften. And an inhale to rise. Taking your time. This is your practice. You do not have to rush. Breathing in and out. If you are ready to find chair pose, I'll meet you there on an inhale. We're going to do this flow one more time on each side and then call it a day. Move into cool down. So you could shift the weight into your left foot if you'd like to hover onto your right toes, or tap to the right for 3, 2, 1, and then lengthen through your left leg. Option 2, keep the right toes touching or hover the right foot. 1 breath here. And as you exhale, you might step your right foot back for warrior 1 or high crescent, just by bringing the ball of the right foot to the mat. 3 breaths. In movement or stillness, you choose. Last breath, can you stay connected to your inhales and exhales? Can you be here in your body? And with your next exhale, you might lower the hands down to the earth. Step your left foot back, and your choice if you'd like to take a side plank high or low on the left side. This is our last one on this side, on our left side. 2 more breaths. Last one. And when you're ready to lower down, you might find a high or low plank and ease down to the abdomen. Your choice of cobra, or shift the hands forward to bring the elbows down to the mat. Breathing into Sphinx. Option to hollow out the heart, because you could always skip it if it's not serving you. But exhaling, maybe the hips hover, or maybe you tuck the toes and hover the knees. 1 breath here. And then lowering down. If you're ready to lower down, because you could always stay longer. Although I've never met anybody who wanted to stay in a plank longer. Option to slide the hands back and press yourself away from the floor. You know the options here: child's pose, or down dog, or anything else you want. 3 breaths. Final breath. And I'll meet you at the top of your mat. Whenever you get there, forward fold. Breathing in for a halfway lift. And letting go for a fold. Inhale to rise when you decide you're ready to. 1 breath at the top. And then we'll come into our final chair pose. So if you'd like to join me, you can inhale and sink the hips down. Maybe you stay at center, or maybe you shift to the right foot and hover to the left toes, or tap to the left for 3, 2, 1. All right. Option to lengthen through your right leg, left toes to the earth, or hover the left foot. 1 breath. And you could step your left foot back for a warrior 1 or high crescent lunge. You choose. Do you want dynamic movement? Do you want stillness? It is your choice. 3 breaths here, exploring this in your own way. Final breath. And if you're ready, if you feel complete, you could lower the hands down to the floor. Step your right foot back. Final plank, side plank that is. Option to head on over to your right, high or low. Maybe you bring the right knee to the floor. 3 breaths. And when you feel complete, you could come back to center, high or low plank on this side. This is our very last vinyasa, yay. We can lower down to the stomach. And your choice of cobra, or slide the hands forward for a sphinx pose. Breathing in and exhale. Option 2, hollow out the heart, maybe stopping here. Maybe you hover the hips by engaging the core, or maybe you tuck the toes and come into a forearm plank. Lots of options. All of them are welcome. Exhaling to release when you decide to. Slide the hands back. And pressing away from the earth, option to find a child's pose, or if you have a hankering for one last downward facing dog, you might send the hips up towards the sky. 3 breaths here. Final breath. If you are in down dog and you'd like to join me in child's pose, option to do so. And let's start to shift our awareness. Shift our pace. We can start moving into some slower movements. You might observe your breath and your heart rate slowly coming back to more of a easeful pace. Last 1 or 2 breaths here. You can choose to stay where you are until you are ready to leave. And when you decide that you are ready to leave, you could meet me in a seated shape. So I'll simply allow my legs to come forward. And I'm going to cross my legs in front of me. All right, we have a couple choices here. It helps to have a blanket, especially if your hip flexors are still kind of tight. It might be helpful to take a blanket, fold it to your desired amount, and the only way to know what that is to try it and then adjust if needed. But you might kind of sit on a blanket, and that just lifts the hips. It creates a little bit more space so that when we come down into our forward fold, it's a bit more spacious. Now, a few more options is if the floor feels especially far away for whatever reason, maybe the hips are just needing a bit more time to open up today, or whatever else it might be. Option 1 is to start to walk your hands toward the floor and lower down to your desired area, maybe even using a block to support your forehead. Or if this first option is not an option, then if you have a couch or like a coffee table in front of you, it might feel supportive to rest in front of your couch or your coffee table and simply lean on whatever that structure is in front of you so that that can support you. So your choice of how you come into this shape, but wherever you are, if you're not already in it, because if you are, that's okay, but if not, then you might begin to inhale. And as you exhale, option to start to walk yourself forward, maybe toward the floor or the block or the couch or the coffee table. And I invite you to be here for the next 8 rounds of breath. Five more breaths. This is where I invite you to really focus more on what you are welcoming. You've done all of the engagement. You've done all of the heated work. We've released. Now, what are you welcoming? Last 1 or 2 breaths. It's always your choice to stay longer, or if you are ready to make your way out, you could start to walk your hands back. And let's take a minute at the top, especially because you might feel a little lightheaded. And then before we move to the next side, you might look down at your legs and notice which one is in front. And whichever one is in front, we're going to switch the cross of our legs. But first, you can give your legs a stretch out for just a moment. And then recross them in the opposite direction. And if you're ready to come down, you could start to fold forward, perhaps allowing this side to be what it will be, knowing that this side of your body is not used the same way as the other side of your body, and that's okay. Another 7 breaths. Final breath. In your own timing, you might begin to press away from the floor or your props. Taking a moment when you get to the top. Perhaps you take your feet to the edges of your mat on the right and left side. Maybe walk your hands back for A little windshield wiper movement, dropping the knees over to one side and then the other. And then we'll start to set up for our final shape. Okay, for this final shape, we have a few options. We're going to be coming into a supported fish pose if you want to come into that pose. So, option one is to use your bolster and lay it on your mat long ways. If you do not have a bolster, the second option is to take your blanket and roll it up like a burrito and instead lay that on your mat long ways. Okay? The third option, if you do not have, and it's a little bit more intense, if you do not have either of those things and you have blocks, is to use 2 blocks, one for your head at the lowest level and one for your spine at the medium level. This option with the blocks is much more, it's a much bigger stretch because the block is much harder, and so it really encourages a big opening through the chest. The blanket and the bolster are also really good options, but just a heads up, if the blocks feel really intense, it's because they are intense. So I already have this set up, so I'll show you this option. But we would lower the spine down, draping it over the blocks, and then bring our head down to the other block. You might plant your feet on the floor, or you might send them out long. Again, that is only one option. The blanket and the bolster are the same thing. And as far as how we're going to come into it, you just create a little bit of space. I like to be able to pass my hand in between my lower back and the bolster. So that's kind of how I measure it. And then you can lower on back. This is definitely a much comfier option. And then again, you could either plant the feet or extend them out long. I'm gonna stay here on my bolster because I'm already here. It's the exact same thing with your blanket. If you have the rolled up blanket, you just drape your spine over the blanket and allow the really amazing, I mean, it feels amazing to me. It might not for you, but whatever you're feeling in your body, allow that to unfold. Making any adjustments needed. Another option, if you like the blocks, but it's just a little bit too hard on your soft muscles, you could drape a blanket over the blocks so that you're still receiving a lot of that structure, but with a bit more padding. And then when you feel settled, option to take your hands and place them over your ribs. It might feel supportive to have your elbows still touching the floor. So then that way you don't have to hold your arms up and you can kind of just drape your hands or your fingertips over your ribs. And just as we explored a 3-part model today, our Prana, Agni, Mala model, I invite you to explore a 3-part breath with me to end our practice. And we'll start just by simply noticing our breath. As always, moving in and out. As you breathe in, can you follow the path of your breath down into your chest, your ribs, and your stomach? And at any point that this breath practice does not feel welcome to your body, you do not have to force yourself to stay with it. You can return back to your normal organic breath at any point. You do not have to force yourself to breathe in a way that does not support your body. So if you'd like to continue following my cues, you can, but you can also leave them at any time and just return to your natural breath. This breath practice is called Durga. It's a 3-part breath, 3 parts being chest, ribs, stomach. And like you are filling a glass of water, the water starts at the bottom of the cup and works its way up. You might also do the same thing with your breath. With your next inhale, you might feel your stomach, your abdomen, expand with your breath as it flows up into your ribs and then up into your chest. And these might be really subtle movements, or they might feel a little bit bigger than usual. That's okay too. And because you might be taking a bigger inhale than usual, it's really important that we take our time. We're not running a marathon. You can breathe as slowly as you want to. You might even slow your exhales down by using your ujjayi breathing, the slight engagement of the throat muscles, to extend your exhales. And that will help prevent your breathing from getting too fast and heavy. And we'll stay with this breath practice for another 8 or so rounds of breath, taking all of the time in the world to breathe in through your nose, filling the bottom of your stomach first, noticing how the ribs might also expand and how the chest might rise before you slowly exhale out. Five more breaths, 4 or 5. Depending on if you're extending your exhale or not, it might be way less than that. And again, at any time you want to leave this breath, you can, or you can stay with it for a few more breaths, your choice. Last round or so. You might choose to stay here in this shape for your time of rest, your shavasana. Or you might choose to leave this supported fish pose, removing any propping from underneath you and coming into any shape that feels especially welcome and restful. Knowing that any position is available to you. You could stay seated, you could lie on your side, you could take the legs up the wall, you could lie on your back. And we'll be here for just a few moments. But just know that you can stay here longer. You can allow this time of rest to be as long as you want it to be. And at any point that you decide you're ready to move out of your shavasana, whether it be in 5 minutes or 15 or longer, I thank you for allowing me to guide you through practice today. I hope that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.